call the meeting to order, please. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, March 1, 2018. The time is 7 o'clock. Please call the roll.
President Gonzalez.
Here.
Trustee Powell.
Here.
Trustee Giza.
Here.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Trustee Sotomayor.
Here.
Trustee Peters.
Here.
Village Manager Francis.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
Also present Village Clerk Haley. Not with us this evening is Trustee Lumsden.
Thank you very much. If you please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to everyone who's here this evening and those watching at home. If you are here with us tonight and you'd like to make a comment to the board at any time, I just ask that you be recognized by the president and that you make your comment from the podium so that the folks at home can hear and see what you have to say. First up, our presentations and public comment, and we have several presentations tonight by Chief Thomas Weitzel. Chief Weitzel.
Well, good evening, Mr. President, trustees, and Manager Francis. I'm going to go over the crime stats for 2017 briefly, and then I'm going to address some issues I'd ask the board to look at that were brought to my attention by Trustee Pollock. So I'll start with the crime stats. I'm happy to report always when crime is down, and it is this year. Our overall crime that's going to be reported to the Illinois State Police and ultimately to the FBI will be down 16.7%. That means 22 less reportable crimes. The UCR's Uniform Crime Reporting doesn't capture all crimes. It captures what the FBI thinks is either violent or important. So a lot of drug crimes are not on that list, traffic, DUIs, some property crimes. All felonies you must report, and most domestic violence type crimes are reportable. So we're going to be down 16%, which puts us at 110 reportable crimes, which is, I think, the lowest since I've been chief in 2008 or close. It's been steadily declining. There have been some years where this uniform crime reporting system has changed the way you report crime, so crime has come down because of the reporting system. That's not true this year. It's just based on the fact that actual reportable crime in Riverside is down. So I'm very happy to report that to the board and our residents. And I also included a chart in the memo that's in there about some just minor police activity, because I will be bringing an annual report to the board probably in April sometime that has much more detail. But most of our categories were down, including, calls for service. The amount of accidents were down 15% in the village last year. The only category that went up was a slight tick, was a juvenile contacts or juvenile. I wouldn't necessarily call them juvenile arrests. They could be station adjustments. But that had a slight uptick. But most of the other areas were down. We are down in some of our tickets because we had some staffing problems last year, but also because the court system has changed what's reported and what officers can cite individuals for. One area I didn't report on here is in 2016, we issued 9 tickets for possession of cannabis because the law changed in 2017 that allowed us to put these misdemeanor arrests for 10 grams or under on a local ordinance ticket. So you remember this board passed an ordinance allowing our police department to issue citations for that petty offense with a $150 fine. We issued 60 tickets in 2017 for possession of cannabis. And I think that's really good because it's minor. It didn't give kids a record. It didn't give them a police record, but still held them accountable for if they were in possession of cannabis. And that include possession of cannabis on school grounds. So we would just give them a citation similar to a parking ticket. That is the state law now in Illinois, that every municipality does that. You can set your fine a different way, but I would like to thank the board for a reasonable fine of $150. I recently attended a chief's meeting in Plainfield, and some towns that set their fines at $400 and $500, they have a 23% rate of those kids or their families paying those fines. Out of those 60 tickets that Riverside issued for $150 cannabis, 59 of them were paid. So the effort, to have these exorbitant fines where they're not going to pay those fines or they're going to fight you in court where you got to send officers to pay overtime is really ridiculous. So I think that when this board set it at 150, I think was very wise. Is there any questions on the crime report?
Trustees? Anyone in the audience? Nope.
And then I'll move on to my memos that are in your packet, reference to 3 issues. I had a conversation with Trustee Pollock earlier, probably this year. First is the LIFT program, like how we were doing in the LIFT program. So I'm going to tell you that the LIFT program, we partnered with LIFT to reduce impaired driving. I remind the board, I tried to partner with Uber, but they weren't interested. But when I reached out to LIFT, they responded to me immediately. And we set up a program where they have coupons that our police department has and our businesses in town have, where they get a discount for impaired drivers. So the restaurants that serve alcohol in town have these, and if they can give them to their patrons if they feel that they're intoxicated to a level that they shouldn't be driving, and they get 50% off. There's a code on there that tracks how many of those are used. They gave us 1,000 because that's the batch that they printed. It would be very difficult for our department to use 1,000. But out of those that we gave out between our facility, police facility, giving them to people in our lobby that were impaired and shouldn't be driving, and the businesses, they used 36 of them. So that's 36 impaired drivers that were off the roadway. And for a town our size, and for not having a stretch of bars, that these are restaurants that have a bar inside, that's a pretty good number. And what I'm most proud of is over the last 4 months, the villages or cities of Villa Park and Waukegan came here. Their police commanders met with my deputy chief, Bill Gotchick, and they instituted the same program. And he has also talked to Farmington Hills, Michigan, and Novi, Michigan, who also instituted the same program based on our protocol. So they came here, they got our general orders, our policies, and then we gave them the contact person at LIFT that we dealt with, and they're doing the same program. So we didn't invent that program. LIFT had been partnering with agencies throughout the United States, but we were the first agency in Illinois, and we're one of the smallest agencies that LIFT provides. LIFT does a lot of this type of outreach in large metropolitan areas. They cited Houston and San Antonio when I did my first research. So it's been very positive program. And then my next issue I had on there
Chief,
was a program.
Chief,
Go ahead.
just a second.
Can I just ask you one question? If someone takes advantage of the LIFT program and they're parked on our streets, should they or somebody from the establishment call the police department, get a license plate so they wouldn't get a ticket?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, Choo Choo has done that before. So they've had a staff member call us and say a blue Cadillac in front of our license plate is going to be here, and we don't cite that. So it would defeat our program to really give them. They'd come back the next day and get it, and they'd have a citation on it.
You drive a blue Cadillac.
So that's a really good point. Absolutely.
Thank you.
The One Mind program is a program that Trustee Pollock asked me to look into that's being headed up by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And a little research on that is the current police chief in Oak Brook, Jim Kruger, is the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police president, and he also serves on the international board. So he has been very instrumental in going around getting municipalities to attempt to join this program. And there's really 4 key points to the program. It's better interaction between police and our citizens or people we run across that would need mental health services. And really the key components is each agency must sign a document that says that we will, 1, establish a clear defined policy for dealing with individuals who are suffering from mental illnesses, develop and implement a written policy for addressing the department's response to those individuals, demonstrate a 100% officers trained and certified in dealing with mental health issues, and the 4th is demonstrate a minimum of 20% of all sworn officers and staff trained in crisis intervention. And you have 36 months to do that. You submit your proofs to the international chiefs, And then at the end of that 36 months, they certify your agency. So what I did is I looked into it to see if it was a fit for our agency, and we could, being a small agency, we could sustain it, and we could, no question. So the first thing I did is I've already gone over to the National Alliance on Mental Health. They're metropolitan suburban agencies out of both Oak Park and LaGrange. And we have now had these tablets printed for all of our officers at their expense, no expense to the village. So we have these available in our police station and in our squad cars. And these have 24-hour services that we can use. They have drop-in centers that if we are available and somebody would need to talk to somebody, our officers could transport somebody to LaGrange, for example, where one of these facilities are, because LaGrange isn't that far from us, so it wouldn't be that stretch. Or there's a facility in Oak Park where we could go to. And the officers have this in their squad car right now that they can just go to these services, really without having to do the vicious circle that I call we did before. So really what happens when we come to people that might not be medically injured but needed psychological help in some way or another, we would call the paramedics. And what happens is the paramedics would come, they transport them to the ER, and the emergency room would be like, what? They're not injured. They're not physically injured. If they don't have a psychiatric ward or they usually would just, release them from the emergency room. And it'd be this circle. Then the next day we get called and the police wouldn't know how to handle it, so we call the paramedics, and the paramedics would take them back to the hospital, and the hospital says, he's not a danger to himself or to the public, he's just acting strange or has some minor issues. Well, we didn't have the resources to do anything besides keep bringing them back to the emergency room. And it just kept going around and around and around and around, and they would never get any real help. And these are usually from individuals that don't have family support. If they have family support, we usually don't run into that. So now, so this is my first venture into that, and we're going to be working on all 4 points within the next 36 months, myself and the command staff. I did speak to Chief Kruger. I have spoken to Chief Madden in Burr Ridge. I think Burr Ridge and Oprah kind of paired up to get the program up and running for them. And there's 136 agencies that are signed on in Illinois to do this now. That includes campus police, metropolitan police, suburban, Chicago. So I think it can do nothing but benefit us, and there's going to be no cost to the village. These mental health organizations are more than willing to work with police agencies and fund whatever we need to get the project done. So I thank Trustee Paul for bringing it to my attention, because it really is something that we're dealing with more and more. We get a lot of what's called well-being checks lately, and a well-being check is just for us to go over and see what the issue is, because a resident might see somebody acting strange in town, or we had a call the other day of somebody banging his head against a tree. Well, it looked strange to the resident, and they were a little afraid, and they called us to just check on the well-being to see if he needs medical help or whatever. And now we have the resources to do more than just ship somebody to a hospital and get them some real help. So I think that'll be a positive program. I will come back to the board when we're certified. I will come back to the board and make that presentation to you.
Excellent.
And my final item in front of the board tonight is I wanted to talk to the board to see if they, really, I guess maybe get your temperature or get your input on whether you think I should be researching cameras in the public way at the entranceways to the village that we would work out that could help reduce criminal activity. These cameras would not be cameras that catch, violators, traffic violators. So I visited or have talked to the Burr Ridge, who has the program, and Elmhurst. Elmhurst uses a company called Vigilant, and they have 12 cameras throughout their village, only to be used, they access for, they don't monitor it all the time in Elmhurst, and if they have a crime in the area, they go back to it and they watch, and they see if they can capture the vehicle or the license plate in the car, and then they use it from there. Burr Ridge program is pretty much the same. I believe they use the Bosch cameras, which is the cameras that will be going into our center here as part of the Consolidated Dispatch Center. So they've been very successful from the chiefs that have talked to us. And there's a lot of different variations. If you went to Burr Ridge, you could see that the ones that they haven't entered the subdivisions are very nicely landscaped and very hidden and very aesthetically appealing. The ones in Elmhurst, they put at major intersections, they're poles that have electric. They don't use the solar because solar's not reliable on bad weather days and you had a crime, it would defeat the purpose. But even those poles can be designed to be more aesthetically pleasing, although they have to be a certain height in order to catch them, or they have to be mounted on village-owned property. To get that thing mounted on an IDOT light would be a very difficult process. So just a ballpark figure, in Elmhurst, they paid between $12,000 and $15,000 per lane. That means per direction. And they have a yearly maintenance fee that goes along with that. They had to buy some devices for their station, as did Burr Ridge, for storing the video for a certain amount of time, in case you have to go back. Elmhurst stores those for 90 days. If they don't have something that they do, it erases it. You could store it for 120. You know, if you have the capacity on your servers, you could store it longer. But in each case, it's not a video system where the police sit there and watch it all the time. I want to be clear on that. They don't sit there and watch. They call it up through an IP address, most of them, when they want to go search for a car they may be looking for that left a crime scene. Elmhurst tries to get the cars leaving the village of Elmhurst. So they try to position their camera, not who's coming in, but who's going out, like towards North Avenue, or who might be going out towards Route 83, those types of cameras, so they catch the criminal going out. Each chief has been very upfront with me, provided me all the documents. Burr Ridge, he provided me the PowerPoint presentation that he did for his board, or the board some time ago, and Elmhurst chief has been very helpful too. There's a lot of groundwork I would have to do to come back to the board with whether we should have these cameras. We'd have to think about a cost, we'd have to think about requests for qualifications or requests for proposals, and I assume we'd have to figure it into the 2019 budget. And it would be an ongoing cost. At least the maintenance cost would be ongoing. So I just wanted to know if the board, if you think I should be putting the time and effort into that research, I'll start it, and I will come back to the board with some preliminary research on the project.
Trustees, any thoughts?
How successful have we been with the, I remember it was like 5 or 6 years ago, we changed the video policy when it came to our businesses. How successful has that been?
It's been voluntary. The businesses that put in the video cameras, we always ask them if they'll give us access to it. I haven't had a real business that said they wouldn't. In fact, that shooting that we had on East Burlington, that car was caught on the Riverside Foods camera. We couldn't get the license plate off it, but that was the shooter's car. That they did catch it, and we did catch it on the red light camera in North Riverside at Harlem and Cermak. So that played a key role in us solving that crime. In each case, we weren't able to get the license plates because they had covered the license plate. But when we ended up making the arrest off the search warrants through Snapchat, lo and behold, that car was parked in the driveway where we went to make the arrest. So, I mean, it's already played a vital role, and the camera at Riverside Foods was pretty clear. So I think that's been successful, and I've had no business when I or my deputy chief have walked in and said, you got a camera that sweeps the corner here. If we have a crime, would you mind signing this document that we could use your, and they've all said yes, absolutely. I haven't had a business owner that said no.
Okay, well, the second part of my question is, does it, or could it make any sense for us to partner with some of our businesses and pay for additional video cameras in their system that where we own the property, we have a better camera at Riverside Foods, we have a better camera at Minuteman, we have a better camera, at the gas stations. Because, if you look at our businesses, they are, at Long Common, they're at Burlington, they're at Quincy, they're downtown. I mean, I know this is out of the box, but can we, if we added to the businesses already that are doing it, bought them an extra camera, and worked with them on the positioning of that camera. So it didn't actually, maybe on their spot, but it was on the street or something. I don't know, I'm just.
So the village didn't own it, it was just their camera, and we were kind of like piggybacking on their.
Right.
Their system.
Their system, we would own the camera.
Yeah.
We would purchase a camera to add to their system.
I think they would have to agree to that, obviously, right? And I'd have to check with the state's attorney's office to make sure that we could use that video for court purposes, which I think we could, because we use the video for Riverside Foods already. And then I don't know if there would be legal issues that we would need to look into, have a private business that we're putting the camera in, and then, because when we need access to those things, it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's 10 o'clock at night. But I mean, it's something we can look at, but I just don't know how those, we'd have to position it so it would catch what we need, right? But with the freestanding ones would definitely catch what we need, for sure. So I guess that's something I could look into. I'd have to really get some advice. I don't know any community that does that, so that would be something innovative for sure. I don't know anybody that puts, because it'd be our hardware we would give to somebody and say, can we add this to your system? So, and then they would have to store it for us, right? It'd be on their servers.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, so I
I'm
don't know.
getting the lawyer look going like this,
Yeah.
sorry.
Are you done?
Did the other chiefs give you an idea of how often this has been valuable to them? How often it's been successful for them to catch something?
Yeah, so Elmhurst has said it's been extremely successful for them many, many times. Burr Ridge, not only has it been successful in apprehensions, they've actually been able to go to look at them and say, you know what, this isn't actually what was reported. This isn't what happened. And then they go to the subdivision and they can calm the fears and say, hey, you know what, this suspicious incident you reported was very innocent, and then they can track it. So in Chief Madden's statement, not only has it helped him solve crimes, it's helped him go back to his residents and say, here's what really happened. It really wasn't like that. And they've been able to calm some fears. So they didn't say that in Elmhurst, but Elmhurst puts them more on major intersections than like Burr Ridge does, or at least right now. But both chiefs, Elmhurst is purchasing 9 more of them in the 2019 budget.
And you said 12,000 to start, and then maintenance fees every year?
They're 12 to 15,000, depending on what system you go. It might even be a little more. These are numbers that when they put them in, but there is a yearly maintenance fee for that too. So it depends on how many cameras you have, on what the maintenance contract is. So ours, if we went with it and only put in 6 cameras, we would have much less maintenance fee than somebody who has 19 cameras. But there would be an ongoing fee, and we may have to update storage in a server for the videos.
Is that your estimate, 6 cameras, is off the top of your head?
Well, when I was when I talked to the board some time ago, we were, somebody had suggested maybe at the coming outward at the Berry Point Bridge, First and Forest, Harlem Lawn Common, maybe 31st and Des Plaines, and maybe Burlington and Harlem. So maybe 5, 6 to start with, or even maybe 2 to 3 to start with, to see if the program was successful, and then expand from there. So, but I think, we could start at a lower end if the board wanted to do that, and then see how the program progressed.
Based on what you've looked at so far, do you think it would be worthwhile to you and the work that your department's doing?
Yes, I think that would be very, very beneficial, because Riverside's the type of community when the criminals come in here, if they don't get lost by our streets at nighttime, they have a hard time getting out. But they seem to exit through the same Forest, Long Common, Burlington, the straight streets. That's where they seem to flee when something happens, because that's how they know to get in and out of the village.
Mr. Pollock?
I'm a very strong supporter of doing this. I believe in it. Obviously, it's worked in Burr Ridge. I know it's worked very well in Burr Ridge. It's been very successful. And that's kind of what brought me to this idea for Riverside, because the way it started in Burr Ridge is, Burr Ridge is more of a collection of subdivisions. It's more suburban community. And it started with 2 or 3 subdivisions who have like 1 or 2 entryways into the entire 50-home, 100-home subdivision. They just put cameras at each of the 2 entrances. and it's simple, fairly inexpensive, and we solved a few crimes. And so then we expanded the program, and now we've got 14 subdivisions that have entryway cameras, and we're expanding it to other non-subdivision areas in future years. Riverside's geography and the physical configuration of Riverside, it's like one big giant subdivision with limited number of entryway points. You don't have any through streets where you'd have to monitor. So I figured the cost, just based on what it costs in Burr Ridge, that for $100,000 to $150,000 one-time expense, we could have a full camera system at every single entryway and exit point of this village. So that if a crime occurs in town by someone from out of town, they can't get away without their license plate being recorded. And the police can go back to the camera. Again, it's all post-incident investigative tool. They can look at the cameras, and they're going to find that vehicle. They're going to get a license plate, assuming they have a basic description and they know what they're looking for.
So I guess Chief is asking at this point whether we'd want him to continue his research. I think I see a bunch of yes nodding heads. So I think, yeah, we'd like, are there any questions from folks here that would?
I just have a comment.
Yeah, but can you step up here, please?
Hi, Therese Dolezal again. I'm at 198 West Quincy, but I was a victim of a crime in Riverside where it was driving related, and I think having those cameras at those entrances would have been pretty crucial in the, the final criminal case that didn't go fully to fruition, but I think it would have been helpful from a personal standpoint.
Right, thank you.
Hi there, Lindsay Morrison, 421 Repton. I don't have an opinion on this yet. I have questions, so that's the right place for that. I think one of the great things is that you've said, Chief, that our crime is going down, and so that's great. So one of my questions is, what issue are we trying to solve here? And is there an issue that's specific and that we kind of have data around we're trying to solve this?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
The issue we're trying to solve is crime.
Well, that's a big mission and issue. Everybody's.
Crime. If you could see in any, a drive-by shooting, I can't think of incidents, but stalking. I see.
The chiefs that I've talked to said one of the major crimes they solve is burglary.
Yeah.
That people come into town in cars, they burglarize, and it's been very helpful in those, a lot of property crime. At least at the Elmhurst, chief said they've been very successful in that area. Because they come into the community to commit the crime. They don't live there, and they exit the community when they commit the crime.
Well, I think that part of my question is around data, to make a decision that also, and to do the research. I hope the research, obviously, there's been some conversations, and that's great, and we're hearing that it helped many, many times. I think a little bit more definitive numbers around what that is would be helpful to understand whether or not it's something that we would want to spend money on as a village. So, if there isn't an increasing problem or a new problem, is this a place to put the chief's time or to put, to put our budget? Not that I'm pro-crime, of course, but I just feel like I don't want to go buy a hammer until I know I have to fasten something together, and I know that a nail is the right way versus a screw or a little bit of glue. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? So, sounds like we do want you to take a look, and obviously, how the folks up here think. We quantify everything before we make decisions.
Absolutely, I'll come back to the board with a complete research, at least decide on whether, before you would do anything. And I will collect data from Elmhurst, Burr Ridge, and there are more communities that have these, but those are just two communities that were close by. And I'll come back with that, and I'll come back with more hard numbers so you would know what the price could be.
Just curious, has there been any vandalism issues with these cameras? People sneaking up behind them and trying to knock them down, things like that?
No, well, the ones in Elmhurst are much higher. They
Oh,
haven't.
they're
Now,
way up.
sometimes the ones that are lower to the ground, they have in the subdivision. The only problem they've had is maybe a car bump it or hit it.
So a
damage it.
close-up of the
But
license plate.
no criminal damage where somebody like spray painted it or anything like that. Sometimes you can design them where people don't even know they're there, depending on the landscaping around it and the way it is, so.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, next up is public comment. We are going to be discussing the SRA issue later. I imagine a lot of you are here for that. I would suggest you wait till we get there if that's what you want to talk about. But other than that, is there anyone that would like to discuss any other issue? Yes, sir, please.
Mark Junkowitz, 165 Berry Point Road. I was just wanted to know if the board is cognizant of the fact that there was like a lot of flooding on, was it the First Division last Tuesday? A lot of the homes have been flooded for the first time in years. We lived in the house 23 years. We've been flooded twice. We were flooded last Tuesday, and we were flooded in October of 2017, right after the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District divorced the sewers. And they still had the equipment on the streets when the flooding started. And now I understand that there was a lot of rain and stuff, and everybody says, well, there's a lot of flooding because the ground is frozen, but there's been a lot of water, and the river's been high many times in the last 23 years, and we've only been flooded twice.
I can address that.
Okay.
We had a meeting just a couple days ago on this issue. It does seem that Berry Point was kind of a focal point for this. So we're in conversation with MWRD and our village engineers to try to see if there were any other than, like you say, the extreme snow, the 3 inches of rain, to see if there was something that might have led to that, to the water issues there. This seems, and Manager Francis is going to talk a little bit in more depth about this, but it seems that some of them were actual backups, and that for like the first time. A lot of the other ones were groundwater, like coming up through sumps and through the cove joints and things like that. But we are aware of that, especially with regard to Berry Point, and we are investigating.
Okay, great. That's exactly what I wanted to find out. So,
yes,
okay, great. Thank you.
And thank you for coming in to tell us about it. Yeah.
I think also a village-wide email went out requesting this information so that it can be more properly investigated.
That's correct, I was gonna.
Oh, part of your, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay. Anyone else? Okay, so that does bring us to the reports of the village officers. I only had a couple. I wasn't even going to mention this until Chief Weitzel said what he said about the LIFT program and how our program is kind of innovative and kind of cutting edge. I've been seeing a lot of things on Facebook and all about coyote sightings. And it's that time of year. They're starting to be more visible, more prevalent. And we also have a very cutting-edge coyote policy in the village of Riverside that was developed by Chief Weitzel and others in the community. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to go to the website and take a look at it. It focuses on the proper ways of hazing these animals so that they don't get people-oriented, because that's really our main goal. Things you can do in terms of behavior to kind of keep them away from your home, bird feeders and things like that attract the squirrels, that attracts the coyotes. So if you're concerned at all about that, or if you are seeing them in your neighborhood, I encourage you to go to our website, take a look at that policy. It's actually been copied all over the country, and I think there was even some international use of our policy. So it's quite innovative. So I encourage you to do that. Did I hear somebody over here want to say something? No. And that's all I have, Manager Francis.
So the one item that I did want to report on was following up on the e-flash that was sent out early this evening, late this afternoon, with regard to the isolated reports that we've received of flooding. We request that residents either contact us via telephone, because some residents are uncomfortable utilizing the Riverside Responds, which is our work order system. I know Director Bailey has been in contact with the couple of residents that have reported it. This information is very helpful when we're doing future planning for infrastructure or trying to narrow down where there might be an issue in a particular sewer main. So I request that of residents. It will be extremely helpful for planning purposes and to investigate where the issue lies. So thank you for coming this evening.
And if you don't have Riverside Response, I urge you to get it. It's an app you can get either on Android or iPhone, and it allows you in real time to place basically a work order. If you see, like you see a pothole or you see something that's askew, you can direct it, and it goes directly to the appropriate village staff that is going to respond to it. And it even shows you a map of incidents that have been reported and incidents that have been cleared since the report. So it's a very, very user-friendly app. So Riverside Responds.
But I would caution residents, if it seems to be an emergency situation that needs to be addressed immediately, call 911 so the police can come out and deploy the appropriate resources. Because sometimes we have had residents that will put in something into Riverside Response and it's after hours. Usually executive staff does track that pretty actively, but if we're in an emergency situation when we're dealing with a number of issues, sometimes that is not responded to nearly as quickly as we'd like. So,
Good point.
thank you.
Okay. Next up is the approval of the consent agenda. First is to approve the voucher list of bills for March 1, 2018, approve the Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes of February 15, 2018, file and review the Police Pension Board regular meeting minutes of November 9, 2017, and the Police Department monthly report for January 2018. Does anybody need anything removed for discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sedeby.
Second.
Second by Ms. Peters. Please call the roll.
Trustee Howell.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Sedeby.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up are reports of departments, commissions, and trustee liaisons. Do we have any liaison reports this evening? Anything to mention? Okay. Moving on to ordinances and resolutions, we have an ordinance approving zoning variations from the residential bulk regulations in Table 3 of Section 10.4.5, pork regulations in Section 10.7.3H5, and nonconforming buildings and structure regulations in Section 10.10.4C of the Riverside zoning ordinance to allow an unenclosed porch addition to a nonconforming enclosed porch and an associate walkway at 173 Gage Road. Director Apt.
We discussed at the last meeting the variation that had a public hearing back in January with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They split the recommendation. There was a recommendation for approval related to the impervious surfaces. However, they recommended denial for the porch encroachment and expansion of a non-conforming structure. At your meeting, there was some further discussion with the petitioner's architect regarding the porch addition. And after discussion about the project and its existing conditions and some of the ambiguity of the code related to porch versus stoop, and also with the net reduction of the impervious surface, the consensus of the trustees was to move forward with approving a variance for this project. So you have before you an ordinance that the village attorney and I drafted. It includes your findings that differed from what the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended. I would like to remind you that since this did come to you as a negative recommendation, it does require a 2/3 majority vote of the trustees in order for this ordinance to pass.
So I'd ask for a motion to approve an ordinance approving certain variations related to a porch addition to 173 Gage Road. By Mr. Gisa. By Mr. Ballerine. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Howell.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Sedeby.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries. And I would just note to the trustees and if they're interested, residents too, the Planning and Zoning Commission was asked to consider some various items after that prior discussion. They had a meeting last night, which was one of the best meetings I think I've seen the Planning and Zoning Commission have in quite a while. And if you want to see an in-depth discussion of porches and stoops and garages and whether we should have front-loading garages, I mean, it was an excellent meeting, and it's available through Riverside TV on demand. So watch it if you're interested. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Next up is a continued discussion regarding a special recreation association. Director Malchiotti.
Good evening, President Sells, Village Board, Village Manager Francis. As directed by the board, I requested information from two organizations, WSSRA and CSPAR. I also invited them to attend tonight's meeting if they wished, and in a short amount of time, they were able to provide me with the information that was included in your packet in the tables. The information provided includes a copy of each organization's most recent budget, participation of each member community, their top programs with fee information, and also the locations of those programs. In addition to that information, there was a community survey conducted to receive feedback from residents. You also have the results of that survey as well. Also, thank you to residents also in a short amount of time to get their feedback. We got a good response in a short amount of time for the survey, so thank you to residents that participated. And I'm happy to answer any questions in regard to that information.
So before we get to the trustees, I assume that everyone here has seen the material that Director Malchiotti has pulled together. Did anyone here want to add anything further before the trustees start discussing this? No? Okay. Trustees, it's up to you. This is the discussion you wanted.
So from my position, I read through everything. I see Ms. Perkos here tonight. My position is that we make a decision tonight and select one of the two, and my recommendation would be WSSRA. I think that the survey spoke for itself. I think that transportation, location, and cost are three of the four top drivers. I think programs was the fourth, but the programs are they're sort of a wash. When I actually broke down a bunch of the costs that were provided, they were very compelling to me. And again, back to what we talked about last meeting was this is not a Parks and Rec budgetary thing for me personally. This is a community, moral obligation by the community to be a part of something like this. And I think that the fact that the locations are in Oak Park, Forest Park, and I think that North Riverside has only been in for about 9 months. I think that over time, there's going to be a lot of activities there as well because of their resources. So I'd like to recommend that we make a decision to go with WSSRA.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
Oh, sure. A motion to move forward with WSSRA.
Motion to move forward with WSSRA. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fowler? Further discussion? I have a little information on the funding side, not so much the selection side. As you know, at our last meeting, there was a letter read by Representative Hernandez, who had offered, as in her position on the Human Services Committee, to assist us in trying to find some solutions for the funding aspect of this. As you all know, for a small community like Riverside, on average, the WSSRA is going to cost about $68,000 to $70,000, a year. So I had a really nice conversation with Representative Hernandez on Tuesday morning, and she assured me that she was going to reach out to her contacts both at WSSRA and elsewhere to see if she can try to find some kind of funding assistance for maybe not just us, but maybe other communities in adjoining communities that are providing these same services. And of course, we were delighted at the last meeting. Trustee Heilenbach is here. The township has also expressed willingness to work with us on this issue. So I would just say that regardless of what decision is made tonight as to selecting and moving forward, I just want to make sure everybody understands that the funding component of this is something that we're going to have to address in the months to come. Probably realistically, given the time frame that's necessary to actually complete the application and approval process, this would be something that we would be looking at, funding for the 2019 budget cycle. So that's kind of where the funding issue stands right now. I'm not gonna kid you, for a small town like us, $70,000 a year as an ongoing expense is a substantial expense. So I just want everyone to be aware that we're taking on that responsibility, and a responsibility I agree with. But it is an additional financial responsibility that we currently do not face. So that's where the funding stands. Further discussion?
Well, I think, and again, I stated last time, I think Westra is the right avenue to go. But I think we have a responsibility to sit down with finance director, the township, Mr. Hernandez, and find out how we put this together. This is not a $70,000 decision. This is, we're not going to do this for a year. We're going to do this for a minimum of 5 years. So that's a $350,000 decision. And I look at this as a program that once we start, I don't see us ever leaving, because we shouldn't. So this is a millions of dollar decision. And I think if we're making that kind of decision, we need to make sure that we have the financial ability to maintain this on an ongoing basis. It doesn't do us any good to go into this without knowing that this is sustainable. And I don't know if we know that yet. I would like to hear from the township. I'd like to see how they feel. They assess the tax levy for mental health. They're very generous with pillars as well as Helping Hand. Helping Hand's mission from their website is to help and assist persons with disabilities to achieve the highest level of independence through quality programs and services. That's exactly what we're talking about here, except recreation. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So I do think that it is our responsibility, but I also think that it's a shared responsibility. And I look at this also kind of like what we did when we discussed crossing guards. It's a shared responsibility. And I think we need to be able to talk to all of our partners and get those answers before we sign on the dotted line. And then I'm thinking, I'm not talking about months. I'm talking about weeks. I'm saying we can have this thing finished by, the end of April. Everyone, by the time the township has their meetings, Mr. Hernandez gets back to us. We'll know exactly what we have. And I think, we're not going to, this isn't, how long has it been since North Riverside signed it? And they're not even online yet, right? Or they just?
Or they're online now.
Okay. But it took them quite a few months, so.
I thought they approved it in October 2017. And then they went online.
Mary Ann is here.
Can you come up to the, welcome back. It's good to see you again. And before you say, I just want to say, in terms, I was really impressed at the speed and how detailed your responses were to our requests for information, and how you broke down. You really responded exactly to what we had asked for, and that was extremely helpful to us.
Happy to answer any questions. Marian Burko, Executive Director, WSSRA. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and love that you're continuing with the dialogue. So the question is, when North Riverside, they started the process last February, and they were finally approved. So the process is, there's a letter of intent that they send to our board requesting their interest, and then we have to do our homework, and then in that process, they had to delay it because of figuring out their own financial piece. So we originally had targeted September as their start date, and that got delayed until the approval, and we decided, based on the fact that it was delayed, we would go with our fiscal year, which is January 1st.
I see.
And they were approved in October and started officially January 1st. once the approval happened, we started all of our processes in terms of communication, getting the word out, meetings with special education from the various districts, and it's an ongoing process.
Is that get to what you were asking?
Any other questions?
Any other questions
Okay.
for Director Burko? Thank you very much. Anything else?
My feeling, I agree with Trustee Gisa, this is not a right, this is an obligation. I think we spoke loudly at our last meeting that we were going to support it and we'll figure out how to fund it. I see absolutely no reason to delay anything. We're already behind all of our neighboring communities in this effort, and we owe it to the residents to move on this and keep the ball rolling. There is a process that's been described. Funding is part of that process, and that's what we discover as part of that process. The cost represents 0.5% of the village budget, 1/25 of 1% of your tax bill. So I don't know why we're still talking about it. I think we need to get moving on it and get it implemented as quick as possible.
Further discussion? So we have a motion and a second to move forward with the application process with WSSRA. Anything else? Please call the roll.
Well, one question. If we vote positive on this, does this mean that this is done? This is a done deal? This is just to start the process?
Correct. Yeah, this, as a matter of fact, you couldn't take final action tonight based on your agenda. What this is direction to start moving in the direction of creating an IGA and the steps that are needed to legally become part of the process.
Which is, if I understand Director Burko, so we'd have to have a letter of intent drafted.
Summarize the steps, correct.
Okay. So that's basically where we are. This is, we're basically directing staff to start the ball rolling.
Mr. Heilenbach, would you like to speak to us, if you wouldn't mind? Since you're here from the township and I interjected you.
Tim Heilenbach, Riverside Township trustee and also president of the Riverside Township Mental Health Board. You have some questions?
Well, at the last meeting, you talked about some sort of shared responsibility.
The Village of North Riverside came to us and with a grant proposal to the Mental Health Board, asking if we would partner with them to put this program from WSSRA into motion. We did our research on it and did our homework. We are governed by the 708 Board of the Mental Health Board, and according to our consultant and an attorney, that is not allowed. We cannot, one taxing body can't give another taxing body any money. We didn't want to stop there though. So what we are doing, and probably at our March meeting, we are going to assist the residents that have special needs children by looking at fees for certain of the activities. And we've worked with WSSRA, our consultant has, where they don't have to fill out any forms. On a quarterly basis, we will take care of the fees. Now, we talked about several different things. 100%, that we would cover. We're looking at 50% because if you do 100% and then we get limited in funding, it's awful hard to come down. So we're looking at 50% for the cost of a program and also 50% of the travel costs. So if they have to come to the house and pick up, the child, we'll take care of half of that. If they want to go horseback riding, which seemed to be very popular at the last meeting, we'll take care of that. What we're also looking at is we can't take care of anything that has alcohol involved in it or gambling, because some of these programs do send off to, the ballpark where there's alcohol involved, or even to the gambling boats as a fun time. So we have to limit those activities.
Okay, understand that you can't write a check to the Village of Riverside, but why couldn't the township write a check to Western?
Well, the township,
in the name
the
of
Mental Health Board,
right.
Because...
Can I interject?
Sure.
Here? I kind of don't feel good about this.
Okay.
that we're perhaps putting Trustee Heilenbach in a position that if we're going to have these kind of negotiations, I mean, I understand what you're saying. We have a mental health board, we have a tax assessed for these purposes, but I think that's something that maybe it's better worked out with staff and in a quieter setting.
The mental health board would be happy to sit down with all of you, any of you, Trustee Gisa, at any time.
We appreciate that very
And,
much.
you know, this is part of our community too. So we'll do whatever we can to help you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it, sir. Any further conversation? Please call the roll.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Giza.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Sedemy.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Motion carries. We have no new business this evening. We have no need for an executive session, so I ask for a motion and second to adjourn.
So moved.
By Ms. Peters, with a smile on her face. Second by Mr. Ballerine. Please call the roll.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Giza. Trustee Valerie. Trustee Valerie. Trustee Sedemy.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night.